So I've been talking and hinting for a while that I'm going to be doing something different with the grapes this year. And the reason for that is last year we got so many that we ended up freezing most of them and putting them in a deep freeze, and we still have some from last year. So I don't want to freeze them again this year because I feel like we would just waste them. My guess this year is we'll probably get closer to 100 pounds of grapes off of our 4 vines. We got about 65 last year. We pruned back the grapes a little bit different this year or this last year, and I think it looks like there's far more fruit on the vines than we've had in the past. So what I've done is I've made something to sun dry to make raisins. These were green grapes that I bought from the store just to do a test run, and a couple are ready. They took about 10 days in the sun. I thought it'd be quicker. I read that it would take longer, 10 to 14 days. I thought it would be quicker based on the heat that we have and how hot the sun is in our zone. But it did take 10 days, and there's still a few of the green grapes that are not quite done. Let me show you what I did. So I started with this test of 2 foot by 2 foot. And what it is, it's got two levels, two layers to it. So it's the exact same simple frame below and up top. And then it has this really tight chicken wire. This is 1/4 inch. I got 1/8 inch, which I'm going to use today. And because bugs could still get through this, I used cheesecloth on top, which wasn't my favorite. So I'm glad I figured that out before I do a bigger one. I'm going to use window screen material today when I make a bigger one. But you can see here, there's still some green grapes that are ready to go. So the sun is just drying them, doing it all on itself. Every once in a while, I'll come and I'll just shake this thing so they kind of get moved around. I'm also doing sun-dried tomatoes. These are only about a week old, so they still need a little longer. And then I added purple grapes a couple days after the green grapes. The purple grapes are sweeter than the green grapes. The green grapes turn this brownish color that's not the most appealing, but they do still taste really good. So let me show you now how we made this. Let's talk about the plan of what I'm going to do today, and then I'll show you the materials that you'll need as well as the tools you're going to need. That I said that I made before for the test run was a 2 foot by 2 foot. There is no way that I'd be able to put a ton of grapes on there. And given that they're going to take about 2 weeks, it just wouldn't work. So today I'm going to build an 8 foot by 2 foot. I'm going to quadruple the size that I have. And I'm hoping that with that, I'll be able to process a large percentage of the grapes that we get through the sun dryer and make raisins out of them. Typically, for a lot of my projects, I use recycled wood. On this one, I'm going a little nicer. So this is some sanded pine. It's a little smoother. It's a little bit better. But this is I think it's 1x4, but it's 1x4 by 8 foot. I got 6 of these. I'm going to need 4 of these just to make the top and bottom of the frame. And then I'm going to need to cut one into 2 foot sections that will make the side to make the rectangle. I got an extra board just in case any of my math or anything is off here or I mess up. So we have a backup plan. This is the wood we're going to use. On my test run, we went with 1/4 inch. Uh, I call it chicken wire, but it's not really chicken wire. And I can't remember what it was called on Amazon. I want to say maybe galvanized steel fencing. I have no idea. Anyway, this is actually tighter. This is an 1/8 of an inch. A little bit pricier, but it's going to be better for what I need. So this is an 1/8 of an inch. I want to say it's 50 feet long by 24 inches. So this is going to be my width of my new sun dryer. So that'll fit perfect, and I'll just have to make one vertical cut at the end of it. So that is going to be what the actual grapes and tomatoes will sit on. But I need an extra layer that will protect them from bugs because I don't want the bugs to fly in there and do their business. So this is just for the fruit to sit on. And you do need to keep in mind you need good airflow. So on the outer layer, on the very outer layer, what I'm going to do is use this screen netting replacement for like a screen window. And this is probably, it looks like it might be down to a 16th of an inch, if not smaller. It's at least half the size of this. This is going to stop just about anything from getting in there, but not the air and not the light, which I need. So that'll be on the outside. Other things that I'm going to be doing, just hinges, basic hinges, nothing too heavy or sturdy, but you need to be able to snap it closed on itself. And then I actually prefer that it can latch closed so that my kids or the wind doesn't knock it open because I leave it outside. So I have this little latch hook that will just snap over the front, like the one I showed you on my test sun dryer. The wood cost me about $50 this morning. These extra hinges and things cost me about $7. I want to say this 50-foot fencing here costs $35 on Amazon, and I can't remember the price of this. But if you're looking for doing this just one time, you're not going to save money. You can just go buy raisins. It's going to be cheaper. But if you enjoy the adventure of a new yard project or food project, and you have a lot of grapes coming off of your vines or a lot of tomatoes for that, and you want to try to sun dry them, then yes, I would recommend doing this. So I'm going with the nicer wood because I'm hoping this is going to last me a couple of years. Otherwise, I'm not coming out even close to breaking even on this. So with the nicer wood and nicer materials and a little more time and effort on a construction, hopefully I can get several seasons out of this project and several years of raisins and sun-dried tomatoes. Let's talk about the tools. For this project, it's going to be easiest if you have a compound miter saw. The reason being is we're going to be making 45-degree cuts. Now, a 45-degree cut, you could do that without the miter saw, but it's going to make it easier. So if you have a compound miter saw, perfect. If not, don't go buy one for this project. Maybe you can borrow one from a friend, or just try your best to get the cuts at 45-degree angles when we talk about that in a minute. A staple gun, you're going to go through a lot of staples. So get a staple gun and a lot of extra staples, because all of this, what I'm going to call chicken coop wire, which I know it's not that, but all of this chicken coop and all of this screen mesh is going to be stapled onto your project. So stapler, you're going to need a drill. So a power drill is going to make it the easiest. And then on top of that, you're going to definitely want a measuring tape and something to mark with. And I find that when I'm using this smaller wood, this 1 inch by 3 inch or 1 inch by 4 inch, I get a lot of cracking and splintering of it. So if you do pre-drilled holes for your screws, it's going to help. Even if you have the screws that are supposed to be no fracture on the wood, this still helps. So I'll probably pre-drill my holes because, again, I said I'm trying to make this project last. So unlike a lot of my projects, I'm going to take a little extra time on this one. But what I'm going to do here is I already know that my wood is 8 foot long, but I definitely need to get this 45-degree cuts on 4 different pieces of wood. So we're going to do that real quick, and then we'll cut the sides. We now have our 4 8-foot long cuts, and they have 45-degree angles cut into them on both sides. So now what we're going to do, we're going to cut out 4 2-foot sections and also notch 45-degree angles in those. So when I was cutting, I was looking for a few things. I was looking to see if there were any imperfections on the edge of the cuts that I had, and if so, I could just cut that out with the 45-degree cuts. If not, it didn't make a difference which side I cut. I was also measuring each individual board to ensure it's 24 inches. A lot of my projects, I'm just going to take a 2x4x8 and trust that it's 8 feet, and I'll just cut it. I'll pre-measure and cut. And in this case, I cut and then measured and then cut and then measured and then cut and then measured to ensure that it's exactly the same. And then there was one cut that I had that I missed the corner by maybe less than an eighth of an inch, but I went back and shaved it off so that I had exactly the same size. And I'm pretty happy with what I have here. So you can kind of see they're the same. They all should be 24 inches from here to here. And then this is going to be where it joins in alongside. But also, I mean, that's a pretty, I'm holding it up and it's not quite smooth, but that's a pretty uniform cut across the board. So I'm pretty happy with that. It should allow me to make a really square, rectangular setup in this case. So excited because on the test one I made, I just kind of rushed it like I do with a lot of my projects. And what I found is it was just off. It wasn't quite square, despite the fact that I measured everything, but I didn't take as much time as I'm taking on this one. So I really want this to be perfectly square. We're going to put away the saw, and then we're going to start to assemble, and I'll show you how we do that. So for the most part, I'm pretty happy with how these right angles came out. Now, they're still not 100% perfect. I'm going to play with them a little more and see if I can get them, but we're about ready to put this piece together. A little trick I do when I'm trying to put it together, I'm going to take a few staples and staple it together. That's not going to hold it, but it might just help hold it just enough so that when I put the screws in, I'm going to be good. So I'm going to, once I get it lined up to where I want, just going to make sure it doesn't move on me. Just put 2 staples. And that'll kind of help hold it together a bit. Not going to dare move it. I probably could tilt it and show you, but I don't want to touch it just yet. To hold this together, my plan is I'm going to use these wood screws. So I have 8 by 1 1/4 inch. They are supposed to help so that it doesn't strip the wood, but this is really thin wood. I mean, it's, in all honesty and measurement, that's what, 5/8 of an inch maybe. And I need these little screws to go all the way up without actually running into each other. So the way I plan on doing that, I'm going to do 2 screws for each corner, and I'm going to do them like this. So I am going to pre-drill holes with my 5/16 drill bit. And how I'm going to drill those, so I need to make sure that my screws are going all the way in, but that they're not also running into each other. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to drill one hole down to here and another up to there. So essentially, I'm going to take my 5/16 drill bit and I'm going to drill it to there on this side. And on the other side, I'll drill it to there, and then I'll screw them in. But I'm going to do this on all sides. The next task, once you have that done, is to lay out your mesh screen. And you want to get this as squared up as you can. And in the case of mine, it hangs over just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it flush with one side and have it hang over a little more on the other. That's going to help me when I put the hinges on, and we'll explain that, but it should make it so it doesn't get as caught up. So I just need to go through now and staple this down and then cut it up. Probably noticed I went through with a rubber mallet and I kind of just bent down the sides so that I could staple them down. This piece is almost done. So where this fits into the grand scheme, the fruit is going to lie on this, on top of this. So what I need is, because the fruit's going to be actually sitting on this one, I need a barrier separated to keep the bugs away. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put the mesh screen on the other side. Okay, that is one side done. Now, it will be the bottom, and it will sit like this. Again, grapes, tomatoes, they're going to go on top of here. I've got about 5/8 of an inch separating with the mesh screen in this. Now, when I went through and did the mesh screen, keep in mind, this is your outer barrier from insects. So I was going 3 to 4 inches on my staples so that there's no gap for insects to get into. I also pulled it tight. When I was doing the corner ones, I did 2 or 3, if not 4 staples and different angles, because that's where the tension is when you're pulling. And then just keep it kind of pulled tight as you go so that you don't get big wrinkles and gaps in it. I need to make one more like this. So this is half of the project. The next one is going to be a little bit different though, because I need to keep in mind, if my grapes are sitting here and I build the other one an exact mirror image of this, I'm going to have a grape press because it's going to be pushing my grapes together. And that's going to be squeezing all of the juice out of the grapes. You don't want that. You want the sun to dehydrate the grapes. So I need to build it a little bit reversed, where I'm going to be doing a similar model, but I'm going to have, again, a 5/8 of an inch or so, because I'll have one just like this without the mesh underneath sitting on top. So there's a gap there for the grapes to sit in. And then on the mesh, we'll do that a little bit different, because we do still want to have somewhat of a gap between this chicken coop wire and the screen mesh. Otherwise, insects can just still access the fruit, which we want to avoid. I'm going to go ahead and build the second one. And I'm not going to show how to do that because it's the same process. But then once I have that done, we will put them together. So we have both sides done, mostly. This one still needs the screen mesh, but we're gonna do that a little differently. Now, let's set it up how it will be so that it makes more sense. This is the top, so let's get the bottom. And this is the one that's fully done with screen and everything. Your mesh is gonna go on the upside. That is gonna be where the fruit lies again. Now this one, my mesh is on this side. So on the other side, I have a gap. You can see in here, I've got 5/8 of an inch. That's what you need for your fruit. You need a gap. So this one goes on top in a way that the gap is gonna still be there. Now, I'm just trying to match it up as square as possible. And even with my extra careful measurements, I'm still slightly off, but I think I'm closer than on my last one, so it'll work. All right. Now I talked about how bending these over on this side can affect the hinge. This side over here is clean. I stopped it right on the edge, so it doesn't have any of that. So now we're gonna put the hinge on the other side. You're gonna wanna get it as square as you possibly can. And just have to accept what's not perfect. There we go. I'm gonna measure these out just because it drives me insane when it's not symmetrical. Now your hinge has a, if you look at it, the part in the center, it's either facing in or facing out. In this case, I want it facing out because I need to pull these as close as possible. I don't want gaps. So I'm gonna have my hinge facing outward. Now I have my top hinge to fasten it together, which I want on center. So right at 4. So, apart from putting the last mesh on, this is basically it. So now I have a fairly large area. And, you know, in hindsight, what I would actually do is I'd flip it around. Just because having the grapes in here is going to help capture them. Whereas here, they're going to roll off. So you can flip it upside down once you have it done. That doesn't make a difference. And then that'll hold it shut from the wind and the kids. And then what I need to do is just finish the mesh. And I'm gonna try to figure out a way to put a stand on this one too, because I want it, even my little 2x2, just you had to find somewhere out of the way where it was in the sun, where it was up where the dog couldn't get it. So I'd like to just put this one on a stand so I have it out there and can just turn it. So I have some ideas on that. When I come up with them, I will add that on here and I'll show you how to do the mesh. In the case of the mesh on this other side, it's important to make sure that it's elevated or that there's some gap between it and the wire meshing. And so in this case, I went with some recycled 1x2s that I just shaved down and sanded down a bit and just put 3 of those on the back side just to raise it up enough so that I could put the mesh on top of that and that there would be a gap in between. And I extended the mesh over the back hinges as well to cover those gaps. So the plan is going to be to just build a stand off of this. It's going to open up like I already showed from the top. We switched it. What I said was going to be the top ended up being the bottom just because it has the extra layer in there that I can put the grapes so they don't fall. But it's basically ready to go. I just need to finish the stand, which I'll just do a short when I have that done to show how that came out. All right, so I think the sun dryer is basically done. All I really need to do is add some legs to it, a stand to it, which I'm going to do hopefully soon. I just haven't had the time. Honestly, it's been crazy the last couple weeks. It's going to probably continue to be crazy, but that shouldn't take too long. So I'll add some legs to it, and I'll just update it with a short in the YouTube channel with the finished product. And I'll probably throw some of the Sun Gold cherry tomatoes because I have probably enough time to get a whole batch of those sun dried before my grapes are done. So pretty excited about what it's going to be like this year for my raisins. I've got a whole bag of green and purple raisins that I did from store-bought ones. It turned out really well. They were really sweet. The purple obviously were a little bit sweeter than the green, but they're both really good. So really excited about this. I'll kind of keep you guys all updated as I do it through short videos, at least for the raisins going forward. But when we go to harvest the grapes, I'll probably end up doing another video for that, and show you what it's turned out to be like this year. Hoping for a bumper crop, so we'll see. Let me know if you've done raisins. Let me know any tricks you have. Anything really. I'm new to this, so excited to see if you guys have any comments on it, but also excited to see how it turns out. Okay, thanks.